Such a weird one, isn't it?
I know I've not sat here for a very long time. But I had a topic that I would quite like to talk about. So you might have seen, as a lot of our topics come from, I did a post on LinkedIn the other day about something that is being talked about a little bit, but maybe not as much as it should be. Quiet firing. Have you heard of this?
I've heard of that. There's another one as well, isn't there?
Quiet quitting.
Quiet quitting.
Yeah, so quiet firing has come off the back of quiet quitting. So quiet quitting is basically the idea of turning up to work and just doing your job, finishing for the day and going home. So I think a lot of the idea behind it was it was quite a TikTok thing actually where it came from. But it was a lot of definitely like younger people that were working stupid hours, like putting in the real graft, but not actually getting anything in return, like not seeing a promotion, not seeing a pay rise, anything else. So a lot of them would turn around and said, well, we're not getting anything extra from putting in all those hours, so what if we just do our jobs? What if we just do what we're paid to do? And that's it, we go home and we're done. But then what's come off, which is a whole different topic. So what has come off the back of that is this quiet firing, which is essentially just constructive dismissal. So I think it's been given a different name in response to quiet quitting, but it's the idea of an employer making an employee want to leave. As opposed to having grounds to fire them or anything else, it's more putting things in place that lead them to quit. Mm-hmm. So, like, fairly big examples is things like not giving a promotion to somebody that deserves it, like if a position came up and then you gave it to somebody else who might be less deserving, or hired somebody externally instead of promoting somebody internally, even though they would have been really well suited to the job. Same goes for giving like raises, so consistently not giving a pay raise despite there being grounds for one to be put in place. It's basically just bullying, if we're really honest, because a lot of it is stuff like somebody might have been part of like a regular meeting that went on all the time, and now all of a sudden they've been dropped from that and they're nothing to do with the meeting and they're not part of that project anymore, and there's not been any reason for it, or it's something actually they benefit from being in, but they're sort of like steadily getting pushed out of things and backed into a corner where they don't actually feel like they want to be in the job anymore or part of the company. So it is basically constructive dismissal. But there's been quite a lot of talk in like the mainstream media as well around this sort of, well, I guess people are calling it a bit of a craze where more employers are doing it, but I don't think any more are doing it. I just think it's starting to be recognised more.
Yeah, it's a tough one to quantify whether it's actually happening.
Constructive dismissal has been happening for ever. And bullying bosses is not new.
I wouldn't... Yeah, quiet firing's obviously a term that's been coined off the back of the quiet quitting trend, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Because a lot of what people are saying is like, in response to this generation saying, or like starting this thing around quiet quitting, in response, employers are turning around and saying, well, we're going to do quiet firing. But I don't think that's the case. I actually think a lot of this is something that's been going on for a really long time. And the people that would have been doing it or have been doing it 5 years ago aren't just going to suddenly start doing it because it's been talked about on TikTok.
I think, is it not just shit employers?
Yeah, 100%.
That are now just getting called out.
Yeah.
And a phrase has been put against it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's nothing new. I think that's it's almost been like coined as, I don't know, people are treating it like, oh, this revolution to us just not doing enough, but it's not. It's just calling out something that's been going on for forever.
I think it sort of ties into the last couple of years of that old where you have an entitlement going in for a role for example.
Yeah.
That generation of people in work now feels like they've got a platform to speak about these things, but also it's being recognised.
Yeah.
Shit employers have been around for a long time. I think we're just probably finding out about them all.
Yeah, and I think the fact that there are really easily accessible platforms that are giving people a voice to talk about it, fantastic. If you're getting called out on TikTok, then that's your own fault. It's not a fault of the community or the platform. Don't be a shit boss.
I think that's the underlying message, isn't it? Don't be a shit boss.
If you do shit stuff, then you get called out about it. You can't really complain.
No, I think it comes from a lot of different things. I guess there will be sectors that have more occurrences of it or more cases of it. But I think that again comes down to the fact that in certain markets, digital being one, there's a lot of opportunity for people with those skills to go and find another employer, which puts a spotlight on bad ones, essentially, because they've got an expectation already of what they feel like they should be treated like and what they should be treated like. So when they find themselves in a position where, especially if you're working your ass off and you're not getting valued or rewarded.
Yeah, because there's quite different levels to it. So I've definitely seen this in a workplace, and I've seen a boss that has done it repeatedly to different people. So you'd almost watch them pick out a person, and that's the person you watched it happen. And what's awful is everybody just sat back and allowed it to happen instead of calling it out. But you almost don't want to then be the one that speaks out, and then you'll quite quickly know that you would become that person.
It's just, it blows my mind a little bit that it even exists. It's just not how things should be done on any level.
It's definitely not. But if you're in a business where that is suddenly happening to you, I don't know. I think there's almost, if the employer is doing that with their intention is to make you quit, then I can see actually that almost backfiring a little bit, because you almost want to, you'd be a bit scared to then go, well, do I want to move on? Because what if this is happening everywhere, and am I better doing it somewhere where I know the people, I understand that boss a bit more, I might be able to get around him a bit more. Whereas if this is just how a workplace is meant to be, and your boss is always horrible to you.
Yeah, I think we're moving away from normalising shit employers, though, aren't we? It's like,
really hope so.
All this does is give people a platform to come at it and deal with it. I think if you're employing people, and there's two sides to it as well, like if someone isn't doing the job that they're there to do, it's your responsibility to give as much support as you can to make sure that person then can succeed in the role. However, you've got to have that conversation, however uncomfortable that might be. Giving negative feedback to someone that's constructive as early as possible. That's how it surely should be approached. And likewise, from the employee's standpoint, same thing. If you're busting your ass every day and you feel like you deserve more, then there's no argument against that. If you're not in an environment that supports that and recognises that, then there's probably something wrong.
Yeah, I can just see, though, I think a lot of this has come from, like I said, a bit of a younger generation. And it's really good that actually they are going, because I think for me, when I watched this in a workplace, and at no point was I like, yes, you were like, yeah, that's not right. But you were also personally super determined to it not be you in a way.
I'm going to say something controversial now. I think there's a generation of people that are entering work that are young professionals at the moment that I think, based on the last couple of years' events and how the world is right now, that are slightly less capable of dealing with pressure and stress.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think potentially there's a mismatch in an employer's expectation for what that generation is capable of being able to cope with.
Yeah, but Well, I suppose in a way they've also kind of, as a generation, set their own boundaries already.
But yeah, equally.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But there is, like, it's up to an employer to figure out how you then motivate that person or teach them to deal with that stress, as opposed to just, they're not going to cut it.
Yeah, it's about building the right environment and putting the right support systems in place. And ultimately, that's what you've got in front of you. The market is how it is. So I think poor employers will sit back, whereas good ones will adapt and make sure that they're out in front with how they support the staff, how they onboard staff, how they train them. All these situations can be resolved, but it's got to be a two-way street. You've got to want to receive that support. You've got to want to move forward, I guess.
Because I suppose, although I said it is a different topic for another day, I personally don't really agree with the quiet quitting as a work ethos. Probably because I'm not of that generation and I'm not somebody who would ever just go in and do the bare minimum. So I find it quite hard to understand that and understand how you wouldn't want to do more and be more within a business. But I suppose if you're not getting rewarded for it,
it's tough because you can dampen someone's morale within the first hour of them starting, and that can just set the tone for the whole time that they're there. But I think again, it just comes down to support, doesn't it? Everybody wants to be, in my opinion, there may be people that just want to sit there and get paid and do the bare minimum, and that's a mindset in itself. But I can't imagine not being able to get the best out of someone, and everybody wants to, in my mind, surely everybody wants to have some fulfillment and be a little bit excited and feel like you've made an impact.
But again, as an employer, just set really clear objectives. If you want somebody to do something to build up to a certain level, you have to spell that out for them. That's part of the problem. That's part of what's brought around this new phrase and this new attitude to work, is a lot of people just not really being given that. Because if you had that and you could see the path that was laid out in front of you and you knew you needed to do X, Y, and Z to get that pay rise or to get to that level, then why wouldn't you do that?
Well, that's a career, isn't it?
Yeah,
ultimately.
Exactly. So I think a lot of it's down to the people not actually spelling out exactly what you need to do to achieve this. And instead it just being like we're just going to promote the people that work really hard and put in more hours.
I think it's up to the company to decide what success looks like for the people that work within a business. It's different, isn't it? Having clear expectations of what you want people to deliver, and then putting support systems in place to help them succeed is how it needs to happen.
Yeah, well, yeah. Maybe
sounds really easy when you say it, but
it does. But maybe that's what is actually being called out here. It's not this generation of people that don't want to work hard. It's, like we said, the shit employers that maybe aren't making a path to progression clear. Or
I think there's an argument for both, but I do think there's probably a slight lack of capability when it comes to being in a corporate environment and dealing with stress, especially in a fast-paced sector and a fast-paced industry. It
is a skill,
and I think it's COVID's definitely had an impact on that.
Yeah,
because there are people that have, like I say, come into the workplace having had even less social interactions, just basic stuff. So I definitely think it's a knock-on.
It's a skill that you can only learn by doing it.
Well, how are you supposed to be expected to conduct a face-to-face client meeting if you've only been working remotely? There are certain, obviously, sectors that don't require face-to-face meetings, but I'm using ours as an example there.
Yeah.
there is going to be a generation of people that come needing that experience that then also have the expectation that they're capable of
So much
doing
more.
that.
Yep. Yeah. But then I guess, again, that is a bit, maybe there is now a gap where more training is needed to build up those skills that people would have learned by being there firsthand.
Yep. I think, there's tons that can be done, and I think we're in a world, and I think COVID's accelerated this as well, whereby the access to content is so vast that experiences are being documented, workplaces are being documented, and I think it's naive of workplaces and employers to think that that isn't a thing. Like they can continue on, and that like if you're doing something wrong, you're not going to get called out.
Well, there's places you can do it without even, you don't have to stick a TikTok video up. Glassdoor. There's loads of places where you can do it and call somebody out and nobody would ever even know you were behind it.
Yeah, well, I think that's almost starting to disappear, isn't it? The anonymous side of the world.
Take your face on.
Yeah, it is. I think it is. I think it's a cultural thing as well. Like everybody's growing up with TikTok and all the other platforms that are out there where you're just putting content out and
actually giving your opinion.
Yeah. And being opinionated is how you get engagement, isn't it? So
yeah, unfortunately. Just be a bit controversial.
Yep.